Hey guys, okay, so you should have completed the anchor chart for domain and range on the front side of this paper. But now I just kind of want to go over some examples with y'all and make sure we have a good understanding of domain and range. On this paper, it does actually ask you if it's a function, which I think again is good practice. So let's look at number one. So number one would be a type of discrete function in the sense that they're not connected and it's not continuous. So this might be things like tickets purchased or items bought at a grocery store, things of that nature, things that you can count. Okay, so if I look at this, let's test if it's a function or not a function. So on all of these, I have graphs. So I need to be doing the vertical line test. So on this first one, I have a point there, 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 and there. So this one, in fact, does pass the vertical line test. So this is indeed a function. So I'm going to erase that so it doesn't get messy with our graphing or our domain and range. Again, I strongly encourage you to use highlighters throughout this. Now, this one, we only have to list the points. So I have yes as a function. And then for domain, I'm going to use blue. Remember, domain represents our x's. So I've got a point here, and that's at -3. And this is 0, 2, excuse me, and 4. Again, domain, I'm only looking at my x values, and that's these numbers right here. Okay. For range, I am looking at my y values. Okay, so I've got -2, and then I've got a point at a y value of 1, and then I actually have 2 that are at the same y value 3. And that's it. Domain and range listed as a set of points because this is a discrete function. Okay, number 2. Now, even though this one looks weird, I still am going to apply the vertical line test. So there's one vertical line, and I do in fact hit this graph or this circle twice. So this is not a function. Excuse me. Okay. Now to look at domain and range, I want to get rid of that. And then now I'll be good to go. So domain, I'm going to highlight in yellow. And I'm going to do that one first. So I need the left boundary. I also need the right boundary. And in between those two boundaries, that would represent my domain. So we're going to write it as x less than, okay, because this is in fact a continuous one because they're connected. It's not a set of points. And I need to see what my furthest most x value is, and it is at -3. Now, to determine if I need a line under my inequality sign or not, I have to think, okay, does -3 count? And in fact, it does because it hits it right there. So I have a line underneath. My furthest right value is at +3, and it also touches the graph. So there's my domain. -3 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 3. Okay. Now let's do range. Range I'm going to do in blue. Again, that represents our Y's. So I'm going to crop it from the bottom and then again on the top. And so anything on the outside of that boundary that I have drawn with my yellow and my blue is not part of domain and range. Okay. So my lowest Y value is at -3. And it does indeed hit the graph. So I'm going to put that line underneath it. And then my highest point is also at 3 and it hits. Okay, so that is domain and range for this one, written as a set of inequalities. Okay, so let's go to number 3. In order for this to be a function, it should pass what? And hopefully you said the vertical line test. And so if I draw myself a vertical line, it indeed does pass the vertical line test. So this is a function. Okay. Now let's look at domain and range. We're going to do domain first. So I have my yellow highlighter and I'm going to go from the left up. But what happened there? I hit an arrow. Okay. All right. So I'm going to try again on the right side. And it happens on the right. I hit an arrow. So when I go to write my domain, I've got x is less than, and when I hit an arrow, that tells me to put negative infinity on the left side and then positive infinity on the right side. Okay. Now, since this technically goes from negative infinity to positive infinity, this is all real numbers. Okay. Now for range, this one's a little weird. Okay, so if I try and draw a boundary on the bottom, then it would look like this. Okay, and then if I drew a boundary on the top, it would look like that, which is really weird. So I have to think, okay, well, what's going on here? Well, all of my Y's are just one number. And they're all right here at 3. So we would just say the range is just y equals 3. There is no other value that fits in this range, only where y is equal to 3. Okay, so that one's kind of weird. All right, let's do a couple more, and then I will let you do the rest on your own. Okay, so number 4. If I look at this, it still has to pass the vertical line test. So right there, it only hits once. But what happens right here? Well, it hits lots of places. So this is not a function because it doesn't pass the vertical line test right there. Okay, so let's do domain and range. We are going to start with domain. So I am going to go from the left to the right. So I'm going to draw my boundary on the left. And then I'm going to draw my boundary on the right. So I've got x less than, that's how I always start it. And then my furthest most left x value is at -4. And since it's a closed circle, that means I put that line underneath it because it does actually include that point. And then on the right, my furthest x value is 2. And again, since it's a closed dot, I put that line underneath it. And so you could think of that as all real numbers that are greater than or equal to -4, but less than 2. because it has to be all of these numbers right in here. Any of those numbers work for that domain. Okay. If they're outside of those yellow boundaries, then does not fit in that domain. Okay. All right. So I'm going to draw my boundary again since I just deleted it. And let's go ahead and do range. So we're going to go from the bottom to the top. Okay, so I've now cropped it and I've got y less than less than. So what is my lowest y value right here? Well, it's at -3. And since that line actually touches -3 and we have a closed circle, then that means those points are included. I put the line underneath my inequality sign. So I go up to the top, okay? And so my highest value is at 3. And again, since it's actually touching 3, it is included in our range. And with this one, you could think of it as all real numbers greater than -3, but less than +3. So that's how you would see it written into words. All real numbers greater than -3 and less than 3. Okay. Let's do 2 more. So the next one, you can determine if it's a function or not. We're going to focus on domain and range. So I need my farthest most left boundary and then my right boundary. And now let's write it. So I have x less than less than. My leftmost boundary is at -3. Since this is an open circle at the end, -3 is not included in the domain. So we just leave it as less than. Okay, and then on the right side, my point is at 2. And again, since this is an open circle, I do not include 2 in the domain. So we leave it as just less than. Now let's do range. So I'm going to go from the bottom and then my boundary on the top. And I'm going to write y less than less than. My lowest point here is at -5. And then my highest point is at +4. And again, since these are open circles, they are not included. So we do not put the line under the inequality sign. And there you have domain and range. Number 6. So again, for domain, I create my left boundary, and then I've got my right boundary. I'm cropping that. When I write it, I'm always going to start with x less than less than. Okay, and my leftmost point is at -5. Since it's an open circle, I do not include it in my domain in the sense that I just leave it as a less than. Okay, and then on the right side, it looks like it's at 4. And again, it's an open circle, so I just leave it. Now here, okay, even though this graph looks weird, I still am thinking, okay, I want my lowest boundary. So my lowest point is right here. Whoops, switch over. Is right here. Okay, it is not right here. Even though that's where it starts, it doesn't matter because it dips below that point and goes all the way down, like kind of like a roller coaster, I guess. And then my top point is wherever the highest part of the graph goes. Okay, So let's write it. I've got y less than. My lowest point is at -5. And since it dips down and does actually touch, we are going to put that line underneath the inequality sign. And then same thing at the top. So its highest point is at 3. And again, it does touch it. So we're going to put that line underneath the inequality sign. And then that would be domain and range. All right, so I want you to do the rest of them on your own. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to email me and let me know. And then make sure that you bring your notes completed tomorrow for me to check. Y'all have a great night.